everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone doing? I, of course, spent most of the day sitting in the car while my cat got chemotherapy. Don't worry about him. Squee has small cell gastrointestinal lymphoma. He's in remission, yet every 3 weeks, without fail, he has to get chemotherapy. And we have basically paid for a summer home, a boat. What are high-ticket items? A private island for our vet with these treatments. But, So I drop Squee off, sit in the car, wait for him, and pretend like I'm going to read. Instead, I text people. That's been my day so far. Tiring, kind of, just sitting and waiting. But I'll tell you what is energizing. Today's episode. Yes, that's right. Today I am talking to Karu Ishibashi, a.k.a. Kishi Bashi. If you don't know who Karu is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from Seattle, Washington, musician Karu Ishibashi grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. And although he wanted to make music professionally, it wasn't until he flunked out of college that he began to pursue it in earnest. In 2003, he formed the band Jupiter One, and they were together for a decade and released 3 albums, also a number of EPs. Also during this time, he was a member of Montreal. Why not check out the episode with Kevin Barnes from Of Montreal in the back catalog from a couple years ago. Anyway, he was a member of Montreal for a number of years. In 2011, though, Karu released his first album as Kishi Bashi, 151A, on Joyful Noise, which has been his label ever since. His 5th album, Cantos, was just released at the end of August, and folks, it is fantastic. This is good. Karu is pretty game to talk. It's always difficult when you talk to a musician. You know, when you talk to someone in comedy, usually you know that they're on board, they know everything that happens on a podcast. But when you start branching out from there, I'd say it's a good 70-30, whether the guest will go along. But Karu's game, we get into growing up mostly in the South, Norfolk, Virginia. But that meant his journey into, it's similar to my own, where you want something, kind of. It's a malformed desire within your chest. You don't really know how to articulate it even in your own brain, let alone out in the world. So we talk about that journey and a lot more. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you listen to Karu's music. It's great. Cantos is the best. And folks, you know what else is the best? Some upcoming episodes that I'll tease right now. Why? Folks, Rose Melberg of the Softies is going to be on the show. We get real into it. Who else? Angry Black Men, fantastic talk. One of my new favorite hip-hop duos. Cartoonist John Pham created the Epoxy series a long time ago that I loved. His new one, J&K, is on Fantagraphics and is beautiful. And also, coming up, Meredith Scardino, the creator of Girls 5 Eva, perhaps the best comedy on TV right now. And Meredith is just brilliant and an awesome person. So stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Karu.
I'll just slate a few anyways, just in case.
It's actually not bad. I can just look for that's probably why people do that, but I'm just like...
It's probably exactly why people do that. So.
You know what? I like to make things hard on myself. Yeah. All right?
Yeah.
What would take 1 second to do, but would make things infinitely easier?
Like slating? Like slating?
I'll look for some unique phrase.
Yeah, I mean, if you like puzzles that don't have anything but just shades of color, like, yeah, then sure. Who needs slates?
I don't. I think I just have a pathological need to both have people like me, and therefore I don't want to ask for too much. I've already asked for a lot so far. And then number 2, no, that's it. Just the pathological need. I don't know if you have that too. Are you also in the please like me club?
Yeah, but I'll still ask for a slate. So.
What is the? I mean, it's something I've worked on the last I don't know 5 years or so to be better at asking very simple requests from people. This happened. My wife and I do another podcast, and Patton Oswalt was on, and he's like,
Oh, yeah.
"Do you want me to record my side?" And we're like, "Well, if you're okay doing that," he's like, "Yeah, you can just ask. I can say no if I don't." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure. Someone can just say no." But then there's the like,
yeah, this is easy. Like on my phone, I appreciate that instead of like opening up my DAW and then like recording and stuff. This is way easier.
Yeah, but then there's the like, my fear, and I don't know if this is. If you are as people pleasery as I am, but the fear then is that you will resent me in some way, even if I ask, because you've known me for 3 minutes and already I've been like, can you do this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, yeah, there might be 1 in 100 people. 1 in 100 people might resent you, but you can't live like that.
Well, I can, and I'm asking I'm asking you.
I'm not one of those people, so don't worry about it.
You're not one of those people that will resent, or you're not one of those people that fears the resentment of others?
Neither.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I want to start here because that seems to me like a mentally healthy person.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty balanced. I'm blessed with good mental health. I'd just like to say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then how did that happen?
Genes, probably.
Really?
Yeah, because my daughter's got like some mental health issues. My wife's, anxious often, so it's like kind of it's just the way I've lived. But I think I think it's just, yeah, it might be genetic, honestly. Like I don't
really.
Yeah, I don't.
Are your parents pretty even keeled?
Yeah, I think so. But I don't know. Maybe I wonder if it's my parents. Like some people just are not, don't need to take pills. Some people should like take medication, if it like debilitates you, you know what I mean? But I don't need to. I feel like I've never hit that point,
But not even therapy. You didn't even like.
Oh no, therapy. No, therapy's necessary.
Okay. I've been to okay.
I've been to therapists, yes, and have benefited tremendously. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you mind if I ask, like, what is the like when you're going when you first went to therapy? Was it just like, I'll see what this is going on?
Yeah.
Just like, I'm anxious. What's happening?
Yeah, because most men of my generation are just like, therapy, that's something in Seinfeld,
Uh-huh.
And then so you try it out and you don't really trust the process, but then once you realize that how important it is, it's invaluable to kind of like rewire your brain. I guess you just don't know how malleable your brain is. You need to work on it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the difference between like psychology and like psychiatry. Psychology is like therapy. You can like work on this brain that can like grow and change. Psychology, psychiatry is literally about just like imbalances and how to like treat that. And and then most people use both, a combination of both.
Yeah. I mean, you're only slightly older than me, and I say that, and I'm from Pennsylvania, so my line about it is just like therapy was something you did if you were court ordered to. Right? It wasn't like it was, or it's something I saw in like a Woody Allen film. So it never appeared to me as
like it's like a New York thing. It's like a New York.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I moved to New York is when I started to go to therapy. So it all checks out. But you are, well, I don't know. I was reading about you growing up, and it doesn't seem like you are from like major metropolitan areas, right? You're born in Seattle, though.
I was only there for 5 years, and then I grew up in upstate New York, like Ithaca, tiny town, and then Norfolk, which is like a Navy town.
Yeah, so none of those are New York or LA, which I think of as the like therapy centers of the United States, or where it's where it is socialized as normal.
Yeah. It was not like that, for sure. It was also like just not a time when I don't think people knew enough about like generational trauma and like, or trauma, in general, and like how it affects your personality. And like, I think there's been leaps and bounds in the past like 20 years, and that's why people are more they're reasonably open to considering it as a mainstream practice,
So how do your parents end up in Seattle in the first place?
They met as students at University of Washington. So they were like, my mom's from Okinawa. She was part of like some kind of when Okinawa was like a territory, after the war. And then like my dad's he's doing yeah, they both met as college students.
I was nodding as if I
So
knew much about Japanese history, and I
let me tell you about that. No, I can't. Yeah, I there's no way. I've been doing a lot of research, so I can't get started on it unless you have specific questions.
no. But I'm just like I was like when Okinawa was just a
Oh
territory.
yeah, yeah. Okay, basically on the eve of the end of the war, before the nuclear bombs, before Hiroshima and stuff, like America was gonna do a land invasion of Japan, and the Japanese used Okinawa as like their final battleground for the
Uh-huh.
for the Americans. So it was the U.S. weren't sure how hard the Japanese would fight. Japanese were using Okinawans who are actually culturally different as they were kind of discriminated against and kind of use them as cannon fodder. So like there was a huge it's called Battle of Okinawa. There's like a lot of civilian casualties. Like a quarter of the civilian population died. And it's a big traumatic event in World War II history. So
What were your parents already born, or was your mom already born? The timeline makes me think that she wasn't born until
she
after
she
the war.
wasn't born after the war, but there was nothing in Okinawa. It was just like rubble. So it was a really sad state. And then the US took like a third of the island, turned it into a US military base. So it's kind of like it's a pretty shitty situation. But my mom was she was like super positive. So she never carried that trauma, and like I never like felt it. It was only until I became like older that I started looking into it and realizing the kind of sustained like trauma that the civilians had, and they still hold a little bit. But they're also like known as a very carefree, loving like people, just like open and kind of very chill.
And that dates from before the war.
Yeah, yeah,
That
they're
kind of
famous. They're famous for being very friendly and open. So, and
Interesting.
my mom is totally like that.
Okay, so it's just like a kind of like cultural
Yeah.
buoyancy,
Yeah,
perhaps.
because mainland Japan is not like that. They're not known to being, or the Chinese or the mainland Japanese are not known to being open and like friendly, historically. But
I'm
the
nodding. I know.
Okinawa, yeah, okay, but the Okinawans were. I just read this big fat book on Okinawa, so that's why I know. But it's like,
Did you read it to try to connect?
no, it's like my next project. I'm working on. I made a documentary, Omoyari before, and then this is like my next where my head is for the next thing. It's kind of my cultural heritage that is Okinawan.
But I mean, like, is it just something like, oh, that's interesting? Or is it something where you are trying to investigate some element of your own personality or your own history?
I think it's both. Because I wouldn't make like I made a but do you know about my movie Omoyari?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah. So anyways, it's like it's basically like if I'm not interested in it, I don't think other people will find it interesting. So I'm looking for things that a modern person, even somebody who's not connected, like from an outsider lens, would find kind of interesting and insightful, particularly about like history and culture. And so I'm looking at Okinawa as this kind of just this interesting idea of like what it's like to be stuck between, like subjugated between like major powers, like between the U.S. and Japan, and between Japan and China, and like kind of like how Hawaii is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like between a rock and a hard place. And just like when major superpowers are battling for dominance, global dominance, it's like what do all these smaller, um, unfortunate like autonomous nations do? They just get swallowed up and assimilated, and that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that lately too. I mean, I don't know what's happened in the last, let's say, 10 months that made me think about these kinds of things. But
Like geopolitics.
Something
and
about geopolitics.
and identity. That's what I think. Identity is like what I think about a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm mostly been thinking about in terms of how dog shit European whites are in terms of, and I'm not saying that there are no European whites that have never made any good art. There are plenty. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying as a culture, like the WASP culture, or like the kind of like bloodless Christian European culture, just sucks shit. And that the last couple hundred years has just been them replacing vibrant cultures. Like I think about the end, I just saw Killers of the Flower Moon for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And just there's this Osage dance. I don't know if you've seen it, but at the very end, there's
I read the book. Yeah, I read the book, but I haven't seen the movie. Yeah.
Besides the fact that it's should probably be from an Osage point of view. I mean, Scorsese's whole thing is the tragedy of the American dipshit. So I understand why it's from the point of view it is. But at the very end of the movie, that they, there's this very beautiful Osage dance, and it's vibrant. The colors are amazing. It's just beautiful. And to think about like kind of Western cultures coming and like just destroying beautiful art in order for, I don't know, boat shoes. I don't like the kind of like replacement boat shoes. Do you know what I mean? Shoes.
Like Crocs.
Yeah. Like that's what it gets replaced with.
I mean, I just came back from my honeymoon, like in Hawaii, and I was like thinking about learning about the history. And it's like, I think now is a time when people are like comfortable maintaining like cultural heritage. But for the longest time, it was just like dog eat dog, And if you think about like, I just learned because my partner's Scotch Irish and she's like from Texas. She's like white. She's white, but she's a philosopher, and like her family was like tracing their history back of like how they came over. And it's like, I didn't know that like 50% of the Revolutionary War was fought by Scots-Irish people who basically hated the English. So, you know what I mean? Like America's independence is rooted in like this, in a multicultural thing. Basically these Scots people were like I think she was originally from like Northern Ireland, this area, and then moved to Scotland, Galway, and then got expelled by the English to kind of resettle the Northern Irish part. That's Scots-Irish intermix. And then they came to America, got booted again because the Irish hated them to some extent because they were associated with the British, and then like they came to America, and basically their joined hatred of the English is why they fought so hard in the Revolutionary. It kind of carried all this like this revolutionary patriotism for this new America, and then they go over to Texas fighting their way, like because I read this book about the Comanche. It's called it's actually really good. It's like purple. Oh, well, I can't find it, but it's about like how brutal the Comanche were in like Texas, and how Texas was kind of formed, and it was like. They were like so violent, and like, they would like routinely like basically kill any children, like torture women. It was like not a problem for them. They're just always just murder. They didn't have much of their own economy. It was basically they're just raiding, following the buffalo and then just raiding and stealing, It was kind of like their culture. And so they were really, it was such a brutal, it was such a hard thing for like, can you imagine like, I don't know, you've been to Texas, but it's like there's some parts of it that are like almost uninhabitable, like desert.
I've been to Austin. So I don't.
Okay. So Austin's like, Austin's kind of lush. That's a nice place to be. But what I'm saying is like, it's to kind of settle in Texas as a Scot, like as somebody who's expelled from England, or Britain, is just like, it's kind of remarkable. Like the kind of journey that they, like all these settlers had to take, it wasn't something where the British troops come out, fire their way open and then clear the land for their colonists. It was like, they sent their most desperate and bravest families and like missionaries, the crazy Christian missionaries out there to kind of like fight their way out.
Yes.
And so I don't know. I just think like when you say like waspy culture, there's a lot to just, it's kind of blasé or bland about it. But if you look deeply, there's a lot of really interesting history of like immigration into this country from Europe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm just being cheeky, I suppose. but it does make me think about that stuff where like, or just like the resentment of having to grow up in a dying culture makes me think that when it doesn't have to be like this. Do you know what I mean? Does that, or maybe you never felt that, or maybe you don't feel that.
When you say dying culture, you're just talking about just mainstream American culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think an American identity is something kind of, I think it's great. Like I personally don't hate it or think it's dumb because there's an idea of like, we're not like anti-aristocracy. We're like, we have our own, America's like the first country that's anti-European. They're like entrenched in like monarchy and aristocracy, but we're like, everybody can be a king. I mean, Trump wants to be king, what I mean is like, there's an idea that we're kind of starting fresh with a new country, which is like, to me, that's like pretty, I don't know. That's a solid identity,
I mean, I like the idea. I don't like how it's been I don't like how it's metastasized into this kind of like, I like the idea of being an individual. I mean, again, like I say, I think because we're close in age, I don't know if this happened to you, but I was very obsessed with being my own person. And I was very obsessed with having my own identity that was, this is the music I like. And it's really important that I like this music and I like when I'm a teenager. And, or it's really important.
Like Pavement?
Yes,
like Pavement.
Very specifically, Pavement was.
It's right there on your wall.
Very specifically, like Malkmus was this like, oh yeah, I want to be like him.
Built to spill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was so important. Like my sister wanted to listen to some of the music, and I was like, no, this is mine. You got to figure out your own music.
You could have just been gatekeeping, potentially.
And now everyone, look, yes, now as an adult, I realize how lame that is. But like, there was something very important about that. There was something important about the idea. I was thinking about this morning about like not selling out. And what did that actually even mean?
You mean back in the day?
Back in the day, like in the 90s. Like
yeah. I mean, I think I remember that. I remember when selling out became okay. And that's when digital music died. Like when Napster came around.
Uh-huh.
Because I remember I used to play in Of Montreal, this like super indie rock band.
Yeah.
And they had that Outback Steakhouse commercial.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And they were like, I remember them telling me like, there's people would buy a ticket, come to their shows, wait in line, doors open, they go up to the front of the barricade and then just face their backs to them because they were just so pissed off at how they had sold out.
Oh my God.
And then there's like there's an apology on their MySpace, and then I think Wilco had some backlash, and then when digital music just died, the value of CD stopped selling, and I think people realized that musicians need to make a living, so that I think that then like commercials and all of a sudden became fine. When I started Kishi Bashi like 2012, it was no problem. I was like in a Microsoft commercial. They're like, "Congratulations, that's so awesome," but like 4 years before that, it was just like it would have been the death of an indie musician to sell out.
Exactly. I remember in the 90s, 2000s, the fact that like anyone talking about like, yeah, we have a manager, we have this or that or whatever, didn't make sense to me. And then I'm talking with a friend of mine who's in a band, and he's talking about publishing rights, and this is like like 5-6 years ago, and I'm like, oh, okay. Things have changed where you're like, yes, I have this person who like tries to get my music in like WB teen shows and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. But that's interesting that you like, cause I always clock it from seeing a Yo La Tango song in a Volkswagen commercial. And then I saw an interview with Ira where he was like, yeah, we, no one's buying albums anymore. And if you want us to make music, this is one of the ways we can do it. Like that we can like sit there and actually have the time to like work on songs.
Yeah. And I think I trace it because Volkswagen was one of the hipper companies to like find cool music.
Yeah.
And I think that's when people started realizing their own their like indie culture was being like commercialized,
Yeah.
But and then people started realizing that the artists were not making money because of Napster, pretty much Napster and LimeWire, I think.
Yeah.
And then Apple Music. Probably around there, I think. For sure.
But were you obsessed with being an individual, or were you okay, like just doing your thing and however you're seen by others?
I just want to make a living as a musician, so
But even before that, like in the 80s and the 90s when you were in school.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. Just like as an Asian kid in the 80s, or like Japanese American in the 80s was kind of like, there's like Japan bashing. I think I tried to just not be, I was kind of isolated. So I tried not to even stick out. So, because if I'd stick out, they'd look at me and then like point out, some idiots would point out, not everybody, but some people would like point out that I'm Asian for some reason.
Yeah.
So I would try not to stick out,
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I just think about in general being othered, but specifically the 80s. I forgot like every movie, like Michael Keaton was in some, was it? What was it?
It's called oh shit. Yeah, that movie is so dumb. Yeah, they made a TV show spin-off of it too.
Yeah, but we're like
called Gung Ho.
Gung Ho. right?
Yeah.
Where like, yes, that I forgot that because of Japanese car companies suddenly.
Well, they were yeah, and Japanese car companies were dominating, and the yen was so rich that all these tourists started coming, and then they started buying like American iconic real estate, like tried to buy Rockefeller Plaza, and like they're buying Monets and you know Picassos, and they were like taking away Detroit jobs from like hardworking Americans, and so like that there's some there's some Japan bashing, but. I don't know. I think 80s were still pretty racist in my view, So 70s, 80s. So I think it wasn't until the 2000s that I started feeling like more like I didn't really wasn't too afraid to like stick out or be individual. So I just kind of like I like to hide under the radar.
Yeah. Was it generally just that you felt more confidence and you could be more yourself, or was it? Yeah, I mean, what was going on? Were you
Well, let me think. I think I was when I went to school. I hung out with a lot of Japanese people. So like, yeah, I went to Cornell for like a couple of years, and then I went to Berkeley College of Music. And my friend group I had a lot of Japanese friend like from Japan, or people who spoke Japanese. So I think I was always kind of excited about connecting because I like manga. I read like a lot of manga and like I watched a lot of anime too. But that was before like manga had a section in Barnes and Nobles like it does today. Nothing was like translated. So and my identity was based around music. And I think musicians are pretty cool. They're like the most liberal. So I in my friend group I never felt like that. I never felt like otherized like in my community.
So it was just finding the right people that kind of allowed you to.
Yeah, I think like musicians are pretty chill. So and accepting, because they just don't they just want to they care about music.
Right.
So I think that's what that was my identity, is music.
Did you have a good circle of friends when you were growing up? Did you feel safe among them, or was it always kind of like no matter where you were kind of just like a wallflower or slinking in the background?
I think in high school there was like some kids who had like who listened to music. I'm trying to remember. Was it the metal in like high school?
Like what kind?
So,
like hair metal or like
just like every kind of metal, like Metallica and like Megadeth, Anthrax, Sepultura a little bit. Just yeah, I went to see some metal shows. So I had some metal friends. They were like generally, I think high school metal kids were similar to just punk kids, or like alternative people.
Yeah, for sure.
They aren't the scary like 20-year-old metal people. They're like all like right wing. I don't know what they are, but I grew up in like Norfolk, which is like a Navy town. So the mosh pits were like scary. They were like everybody's ripped. They're all like in the military and just like Pantera's playing, and you're just like. My friend like lost a tooth, and like I got a couple scars.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I almost died at a Mighty Mighty Boss Tone show. Same thing.
Oh yeah.
Someone.
Oh yeah.
Let's just say overweight fell on me in the mosh pit, and I suffocated for a while. But like, okay, so at what age? You said you were 5 when you left Seattle. So Seattle doesn't really form you that much as a person, does it?
No.
It's really Ithaca, right? Where you like become a human.
Yeah, well, I kind of remember a lot of stuff, like biking around. Yeah.
So it wasn't like a big deal to move.
Yeah, I just got used to it. Some people say they move around a lot. That's like that was like me. So I just got used to it. So like moving every few years. And I still almost do that. I don't think I've ever been in a place for more than like 10 years.
Your parents are professors, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what led them to Ithaca? One of them got.
Yeah. My dad was teaching at Cornell. But I don't think he got tenure, so he went to Old Dominion, which is in Norfolk, and he got his tenure, and then my mom became a Japanese professor there.
What is your dad a professor of? I was about to say teach.
Civil engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are they like as people?
Super nice. They're very like
so
friendly.
Okinawa?
Yeah, my dad's from mainland Japan, but he's chill too. He likes to garden and stuff.
When they met in Seattle, when they met there, was it just like, oh, hey, we're both from Japan, we should know each other? Like, what were the circumstances?
I think I asked my parents, like, what was it like when you met? Like, and they're like, we were walking through a forest, and then I tripped on a log, and then we fell in love. That's what she told me. I have no idea. I mean, they probably have like they probably had a big Japanese whatever Japanese community, like a small number of like Japanese exchange students,
Mhm.
probably like stuck together because it's like a good way to kind of get started. And so
Yeah.
they probably met through that, like a community of Japanese people. They still keep in touch.
When you're growing up, do they teach you about Japanese culture at all, or
Yeah.
is it
Yeah,
only
yeah,
something
yeah.
you're introduced to through books? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like they were good about like trying, all the holidays and like keeping in touch with my relatives in Japan. We did a lot of trips, and I think my mom taught, I kept up in elementary school enough so that I could read manga, you know, as I grew older. And then and then we went we go to Japan every few years to like for extended periods, like months, you know. So like I think, well, summer, like I was in the sixth grade, I was in Japan in the summer in school, and then
Mm.
in my junior year of high school, my dad did a sabbatical. So I was in a Japanese high school for like 6 months.
How was that?
It's pretty cool.
Did you fit in?
Uh, I think they're disappointed because they're like, we've got this exchange student coming, and they're like, oh, he's just like, well, he looks like us. They thought that they wanted like some like you know, blonde, blue-eyed, like something exotic for them.
Some Aryan football player
Yeah, some
from
area.
Minnesota or something?
Yeah, yeah, some solid Caucasian uh breed. But I think no,
No,
it was
he's reading
cool.
Death Note too. This is not fun.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, that was like in the 90s. So but it was cool. I played a lot of mahjong after school. Yeah.
Wait, sorry. The only way I know mahjong is it's usually like 70-year-old women in
Oh,
a community center.
In Japan it's all just a bunch it's men in like gambling halls.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's big. I don't know if it's still big, but it was a pretty popular thing.
So your household is pretty, I'm gonna say buoyant again, but is that true? Growing up, like is it? Well, I guess here's the question: is it everyone's cheerful because they're naturally cheerful, or is it everyone's cheerful because everyone's repressing stuff?
I don't know. Don't people have like cheerful demeanors? Aren't some people just like they don't hold as much trauma or they process it differently or I don't know. I feel like
Yeah,
some
those.
people are just like, some people are really like you could have everything you want or everything you need, but you're still like anxious or like it's not enough. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's
yeah,
like it's kind of just fine. It's about rewiring you found a way to like cope and find happiness.
yeah. I'm telling you, those people confuse me. The people who are just naturally kind of like cheerful, or who are able to process things in a healthier manner. Look, I'm not unhealthy. I know we barely know each other. I'm not unhealthy,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that I don't take enough time to kind of like process stuff when I should. And so I'm always confused by people who are better at it.
Yeah, I mean sometimes like yeah, I guess I'm kind of like that. Like I don't really sometimes I don't process it.
Hmm.
I'm just like it's not my problem. That's how I feel about it. Some like my partner's like or my wife now is very empathetic. So like any like trauma or tragedy she hears about is like affects her
Hmm.
deeply, which is like good, you know, it's to feel empathy like that. But then it can be debilitating where you're just like so many things. Like then
Yeah.
you will look at the news, you know, and I just kind of remind her, it's like, listen, these are things that are happening out there that you're just being reminded of by the media. Just think about the more important things, which is Gaza is also extremely important, issue to feel for the Palestinians, but there's also your family, there's your loved ones around you, there's like your own health. So if you're not happy, you can't really help. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't help others. So like your priority should exist to some extent on yourself first.
Okay. If I can ask, is the flavor of this that that you take this stuff in and you are able to process it like a factory in your brain, or is it more that it deflects off of you?
I think it used to be more like deflecting, which is like a very Japanese thing. There's a word called gaman, which is just to persevere. It's pretty popular, but it's also just internalizing problems, which can cause other problems. So it could be like, maybe I'm more like recycling, you put all your shit in the recycling. You think like, oh, this is gonna like they're gonna take care of everything. They're gonna recycle my little plastic bag with like mustard on it. But in reality, they're probably just throwing away. You know what I mean? They're like probably just like throwing away like 80% of it. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and really taking it. So I think I'm good at like throwing away stuff
Yeah.
and getting to the core of like what's important today.
So were you good at this emotional recycling when you were a kid, or did things affect you?
No, no, no. I mean, I was never like a problem child. I never had like depression, or I never ran away, or like I never like lashed out. So maybe I just had this kind of internal. That's why I think it's genetics. They're just predisposed to just be able to just have a balanced perspective on life.
Was there a path that you wanted to take when you were younger? Like, was it always music? Was there something else you wanted to do?
No, no. I was really excited always about music, but I didn't think of it as a possibility as a career. So I was gonna like be an engineer or something.
Was that just something like, well, my dad teaches civil engineering, I guess I'll do that? Was there any kind of spark of something in you?
No, no. I was like, yeah, I like problem solving, And I think I was in the robotics club. Wasn't I? No, I don't think so. I wasn't. It's in the computer. I think I had a bunch of fake, those things you pad your. I was in the debate club. You pad your resume with it.
You're remembering your like college CV, and you're like, oh yeah, I just put this on there to look impressive.
Probably, yeah. And people do that all the time. I'm sure they do that today. But
I didn't. I was scared. I was scared of putting something on a resume or that they would fact check and find out, and then they would confront me with. So I was always very, very honest about these things.
Yeah, you're like worked at Starbucks. That's it.
Come on. I had a couple other jobs, but
I think like, yeah, well, I was always excited about music, but yeah, it never presented to me as like, I didn't know I could be in a band. I didn't know, but I for some reason, I felt like I needed a job after graduating, I didn't want to like bum around.
Sure.
So I didn't know about freelancing or like what that looked like. You know what I mean? Which is all I do.
Was it a fear that you wouldn't be able to do this stuff? Was it a fear of I need something solid in my life? Or was it an ignorance that it was even a possibility?
Yeah, because I think it was more the latter, because it's like I didn't see any Asian guys being musicians, where I was like, there was like James Iha,
right?
Which I kind of remember, and then I was like, oh, there's this one guy plays bass in a cool band. Other than that, there wasn't really anybody as a musician or like a pop star or like rock star, like a rock and roll band or anything that I remember, Asian guys. So I think like I didn't see that as a possibility. I saw Asian people in like orchestras, but I didn't want to be in an orchestra. Like, so because I played violin, like really, that was my thing. I was really serious about violin in high school, but I just didn't see it as a career opportunity.
And not even like you could play in an orchestra, or you could play in a quartet or something like that.
I was playing, I was like concertmaster of my youth symphony, and I had a string quartet, but it's just like something where the path that people had to do, like they had to go to Juilliard and then they had to do this. Like I wasn't at that level, but I started discovering like improvisation and jazz kind of like right around that time. And it was like jazz violin was my big thing. Like I loved jazz violin. So I started getting into it, but there was no place to like study that, until like a couple of years later, where I discovered like Berkeley had it in Boston. So that's where I ended up going.
But there was no like, I guess what I'm saying is like, it didn't even cross your mind that like, well, I could be like, say you didn't even want to go to Juilliard, right? But you wanted to do this. You could play in a wedding, quartet, or you could do.
Well, I was doing that on the side.
Okay, so you did play. So, but you didn't think like, well, I could do this for a living.
I mean, I was making like chump change, like I was making enough that I didn't need an allowance, So it was like to I don't know, to rent an apartment and like to live. I also had I saw a lot of adults who were in that world. I played with adults, and they didn't seem too psyched about their career opportunities, playing in the Virginia Symphony and then doing like weddings with this high school kid, They were just like, and like teaching on the side,
Okay. Okay. So this makes sense now.
You
So
know.
you got a glimpse into what that life might be, and it
Right.
did
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
seem like a good
It
life
did
to
not, it
you.
did not impress me at all. And so I was like, I'm gonna be an engineer. I don't know. I don't really remember what it was like back in high school, but I think, yeah, going to Cornell, pursuing engineering sounded like a solid choice for me.
Yes, but it didn't. From what I read on Wikipedia, at least, it didn't work out.
It did. No, I was put on academic probation after my second year. So then I went to music school because I knew it just wasn't for me.
Okay. So this is the part that interests me because I also I wanted to again, this stuff is so murky in my head. Like I don't really know what I was feeling. I know on some level what I want to be doing was working in entertainment. But I didn't know it. It wasn't like a conscious thought. It was just buried there where I'm like all the stuff I seem to be doing, like instead of when I was in grad school, instead of writing my paper, I'm working on a Family Guy spec script instead. And like when I was running
did you get it? Did you get your script in?
it was for some contest. I still think some of the jokes are very funny. But and yeah, so no, I probably did finish the paper. I probably did it the night before and it was like mediocre. But the Family Guy spec script, there's some jokes in there that I stand by.
Good.
When I was running for grad rep, like there was one grad rep that would go to all the faculty meetings and kind of like represent all the grad students. I ran against a very studious friend of mine who was very involved and was, top of my cohort. And I just made a comedy video in which I get attacked by CGI bees as I'm running for this
What
position.
grad rep? What is that?
Grad rep.
Grad
you just
rep?
like, at these faculty meetings, you're the voice of the grad students. That's really just
Oh, okay.
you mostly just sit there
Yeah,
and probably are quiet. But it's it's something to put on your CV for when you are doing some some postdoc stuff. And in retrospect, it's revealed to me that that's what I wanted to be doing because that's what I was spending my time doing. And that's what I was putting all of my energy into as opposed to, shitty analytic philosophy. And
wait, you were an analytic philosopher?
I was more of a continental philosopher
because that's what my wife is. She's an analytic philosopher.
Does she like it?
Yeah, she loves it. She's a professor. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll have to talk to her about it. It might be it might be different now. Then it was very stodgy and there was no room for any kind of other point of view.
Yeah, where did you go to school?
Pitt and then Temple for grad school.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's an environmental philosopher. She went to UT Austin. So
okay, well that might be, that's probably a lot more open than when I was doing philosophy of art.
Oh.
Which is
okay, philosophy of art, yeah.
It was like really, really
like aesthetics, whatever.
It was boring and it didn't as someone who made art and who makes art, it had nothing to do with the actual creation.
I think it's fascinating
artworks.
though, just thinking, they're not, a lot of time they're not, they're just talking about art, philosophizing about art, but sometimes you just got to be in it to like understand it. You just can't.
They were doing it in a bad way. I'll tell you this. It was actually theoretically, I think, faulty. So I had this philosophy of film class. You can do philosophy of films. I'm not saying that I think there's brilliant philosophers of film, not the stuff that we were doing. The stuff that we were doing was every week we would look at a definition, a logical definition. X is a film if and only if X is blank. And then you would look for counterexamples. I'm like, that's not how you understand film.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you publish about philosophy of film.
That's how you publish. Now you got it.
Yep. I know.
Okay. So I kept doing the thing I wanted to do. Eventually they were like, stop doing this. And I was like, all right, I will. And then I kept doing the thing I want to do, and they said, please leave. So I'm curious of when this moment happens with other people. What was going on with you?
I mean, I heard, I can't remember, I saw some like inspirational video or somebody like talking to the audience, and he's like, who in this room is doing what they thought they'd be doing, what they believe they'd be doing in high school or college or even college. And like basically nobody in the room raised their hand because they're all in different things, except for like the young 19, 20-year-old who doesn't know. They think that they're on the path. Most people don't realize that their path is until they're in it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think I looking back, yeah, I think when I flunked out of Cornell, I think that's when I really realized that my skill level was in violin and improvising, and I was just dedicated to it. I didn't know all this thing about in order to be good at your craft, you need to love it. I didn't like that. Didn't really register. I don't think people even talked about stuff like that, back in the 90s, But I think now in retrospect, it was like the best move, because I like once I went to Berkeley, the music school, I was like full on like dedicated. I was spending like living, breathing music, and it was so exciting. And I was making I started making a living doing this and that, playing violin, and I studied composition, and film scoring was my major. See, I
Oh,
still had a
nice.
backup. I still had a backup, you
Uh-huh.
know, like just in case. Just freelancing is hard, and it kind of it is. Just playing music is very risky,
Yeah.
So I always did that and composition on the side, and I've always been I've always since then always just been music tangentially, as for work.
But when you're at Cornell, are you just not going to class? Are you trying your hardest and just not doing well? Like, what is going on?
No, I'm like in a band. I'm like jamming. I'm like got bong hits. There's a bong on the table. You know what I mean? It's just like I'm still going to class, but I'm not doing very well, and it's probably because my heart's not in it.
Ah, okay, okay. And do you
Yeah.
know at that time that is? Do you know that what you really want to be doing is music? And you're like, well, I guess I'm resigned myself to engineering anyway, and I'll just see if I can get through. Like, at what point do you know like it's not going well and you're probably gonna get kicked out?
Probably at the end of my second year,
Uh
I
huh.
think, because I think at that time I'd be like, oh, this is my passion, but you can always also have a job. Like this is also the 90s where it's like, you're coming out of like Wall Street boom where people are just like, you make money and then you have a hobby,
Hmm.
where it's not like this work-life balance where you can actually do what you love, you know? And so I think it was a hard transition to come out of that shell, because when I went to I remember telling like one of my other music friends, like he was like, I was like, I'm dropping out of Cornell, I'm going to Berkeley. And then he started crying. And I was like, why are you crying? He's like, that's what I want to do. But my mom said no. And I was
Oh,
like, and I was kind of shocked me because, and then I was glad that like my parents are like supportive, because I think Asian parents, especially like Asian immigrant parents, are not like, they're so wary of their kids going into volatile fields like the arts, because it's
yeah,
like there's no like barely any money in there. It's like they'd rather their kids go. Immigrants want their kids to go into like something like sustainable, like visibly sustained.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I
So
mean, immigrant in general, right? I'm third generation, you're second generation,
mhm.
and you're supposed to do something like they build. You're supposed to build on what they've done
Yeah, yeah,
in some way.
yeah. They're
And
still like they're scarred from their like their journey. So they're like, you better like look how hard I worked. It's not
yeah,
until like a couple generations down where they're like, you should do what you want. And then I think that's when you get apparently there's like Gen Zers are like have this problem of just like not wanting anything and just kind of floating around and not wanting to work and stuff like that. But
well,
I
to
think
be
you need
fair, not I would say not everything about the future is great for them. So,
yeah, my wife. Well, I have an 18-year-old daughter, so I see it. And then my wife, she teaches college kids, so she's like, man, Gen Zers are like super. I don't know if the lazy is the right word, but they are just like entitled, very entitled
oh,
into.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I believe it.
At what point
In
do you?
general, in general,
Uh,
I don't know
uh,
what.
sure, sure. At what point in college or do you stop trying? Did you ever start trying? I mean that supposes that you went in being like, I'm going
Like
to do this.
trying what, like engineering or
Engineering.
music. No, I was good at math, so like I go to class and I could understand most of it. And I started seeing people around me were a lot smarter than me or more dedicated. So I think I don't know. I don't remember much from those 2 years because I was smoking a lot of weed. So I think that's probably the main issue, is that I was probably just living a not studious life.
Uh-huh.
But once I went to Berkeley, and then I was like in the practice rooms like 10 hours a day, just like
Uh,
shedding because I just wanted to be the best. It's competitive,
yeah.
But I loved it,
The quality of the weed in the mid 90s in upstate New York was probably pretty great, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I'm
I
just
mean,
kidding.
probably
It wasn't a
was.
serious question. I was just
Oh, I was thinking like I had to do bong hits, but I can't do a bong hit now. That's like insane. Like how strong weed is now. It's like it's not. They've taken it to another level of just like danger. It's like dangerous. Like yeah, yeah,
I mean, I'm asking these questions mostly because I'm just like those moments where the truth of who you are is revealed to you by, like, you don't discover it from within. It's you bump up against something and
yeah.
you're like, "Oh, this is what I'm
Yeah,
this is who I am." That
I think
they're so interesting.
I think it's like it's really hard to change. I think that's what I was really afraid of deviating from the norm. The norm is like, for me, like a middle class person, you go to college, you get a job, you do this and that. And
Mhm.
I was on this path, and it was very scary to find my own, like, be a freelancer and find my own like career. That was super scary, and it was almost forced upon me when I was just disallowed to continue. So that was like a kind of a I'm sure my parents were like shocked, but and super disappointed at the time. But they were because I was gonna bum around in Ithaca and like play in a band or something. This like big local band had an interest in me joining, and I was like, shit, this is like my break, you know. And then because I was starting to I had my own band, and I was a good like I was starting to improvise on violin pretty well, and they were like, and my dad's like, no, you're gonna get your degree. So Berkeley has, it's a college. So you better go and study. I was gonna bum around for like a semester,
Oh. So
and my
you didn't
dad
even
was,
necessarily choose Berkeley. You were like, I'll be in this I don't know, what is
well,
it? Dave Matthews Band
yeah,
type
yes, basically, or
group.
like Dave, or what was the other band? It was like, what's that other band? It's like do 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 do. Rusted Root. Rusted
Oh.
Root was really big. They're really big,
Yes.
right? Yeah, it's like that kind of band. That was really hot at the time.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I think like I had heard about there's one teacher. There's only one jazz violin teacher in America, like professor, and he was in Berkeley. He kind of wrote the book on it. His name's Matt Glazer, but he so I went to study with. I didn't realize that you could just immediately enroll into Berkeley. It's like there's literally I sent it. He's like I did this like summer thing in like August, like a little seminar, and I liked it. And I talked to him. I was like, if I come here, will you teach me? And he's like, yeah. And then it was like he's like I was like, so should I apply in the spring? And he's like, I don't know. I think you could just apply right now. So I like I just applied, and they're like, yeah, we'll take you.
Oh, really? That was
And
it?
then like yeah, like 3 weeks later, I was in. I moved to Boston, so you know,
There's no grueling audition
nope.
process, nothing?
Berkeley's pretty much if you can pay, you can you can come in. And then I eventually got a scholarship because I'm a violinist.
Uh-huh.
They need like string players, but yeah, and it wasn't like catastrophically expensive like colleges are now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is my favorite question to ask then. At what point do you choose this? Right? Because so far it seems like you're bumping up against other stuff. You're bumping up against other people's desires for you. You get to the end of that, then your dad says, well, no, you're still getting your degree. You got to go get a degree in this. At what point is it like, no, this is what I want to do, and I'm choosing it? I mean, maybe they never got that. I'm not saying, maybe it's
Yeah,
just like it kept happening, and so you just followed that path then.
yeah. I don't think it was always like difficult. I think I don't think I realized that I need to be a musician until like I started this like Kishi Bashi thing. It like started fully making sense because now I evolved into like the artist where it's like now people will listen to my music and they'll like listen to what I have to say and what songs I write, and directions I take. Until then, I was just like throwing everything at the fan or
Mm.
the wall. You know what I mean? I'm just
Uh-huh.
like doing this. I'm dabbling in this. I had a band here, dabbling here, just doing music. It made sense. Like playing music is like something I always knew I was best at. But at some point, it was like so dire before I started Kishibashi. I was like, maybe I was going to go into film. I like editing. You know, I was thinking about going into film at some point, and then I think my parents were like, I consulted, and my wife at the time was just like, "What are you doing? Just you're, you know."
What was the process of then making your own music, or like
Yeah,
doing it for yourself?
I was always I was always making my music, and I'd get mixed responses. Sometimes people would love it, sometimes people would be like, and I always thought that I was good at something, like some aspects of music, but I don't think it really. I think when I started Kishibashi is when it started to stick, and people were like really excited about just. I kind of created a new personality.
Go on.
Like, is it like Kishibashi? Is it a band? Is it a person? It's kind of like mysterious, right? So I'm almost like playing the part of an artist. And as I realized, I think I interacted with, when I was in of Montreal with Kevin Barnes, who's like a very consummate artist. He's like, the purpose of the artist is to be inspired and to create constantly, And I was kind of inspired by him and similar other musicians that I played with. And like Regina Spektor, I toured with her for a year, and she was very inspiring in that they all have the same thing, that their identity is an artistic identity, which is something I didn't really understand until I started Kishibashi, where I was always just a supporter, playing music or composing or doing stuff. I was always supporting something else, but then I didn't realize that you could be this. You had to have it's almost liberating to have a larger vision of what you're trying to create, and actually creates better. I think it creates better music and better art, and it's easier for people to understand and take in when you have a larger vision of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Was that a conscious thought going into it, or was it something that you discovered as you started making music as Kishibashi?
I think I discovered it when I started to take that attitude, when I was able to like reinvent myself. I think that's when I realized that, this is something that works. And I started enjoying it, and people considered me more as an artist instead of like that guy in a band, or like the singer of a band, or like, this guy in this other band.
Because it's also your name, right? Like, I mean, so there's.
I wanted to seem like a band. Like it could be anything. Now people call me now people call me Kishi, but whatever.
Right. But is it like, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, like, did you create a persona that did you purposely create an artistic persona, or was it a natural outgrowth of something like becoming more confident or making a decision or something like that? Does that make sense? I guess like what came first?
What came first was I think I had a lot of ideas. So I was in a band called Jupiter One first for like years. And it was like we had various levels of success, mostly just not successful. And then, but I think towards the end of it, I started realizing that I had this kind of like voice that was being suppressed, which is kind of this orchestral pop thing that's kind of like, and I wanted the freedom to not have like listen to my bandmates. Like if I have a song, I don't want like the bass player. He's like, well, what am I gonna play? I'm like, well, maybe this one doesn't need electric bass on it, or something, or how are we gonna play this live, or something like that, what I mean? And I think, and that's when I realized like my voice. I really started working on my voice and my actual like voice, and then I don't know. I think that kind of really helped breaking free, like just moving out of New York. So that's something that was kind of monumental for me. That was another career path. It was because I was just basically struggling with my family, like I think we lived in New Jersey at some point, Bayonne. And then
I know Bayonne.
You know Bayonne? Yeah, that's where.
Bayonne.
Yeah, I didn't know that George R. R. Martin's from there, but anyways, I moved. So I moved to Norfolk for a couple of years to live with my parents. Took my whole family there, and that was a huge break. But I was already like playing with like of Montreal in Athens, and then I just moved to Athens after that.
Yeah.
But it took me like a whole career change. That's when I was like contemplating going into film. Like I had to like I was like 35, 36, major career change. Like starting my own thing. But I knew that there was some traction because I was, and it was kind of like a last ditch effort.
Yeah. No, I get you. There's like always like you really resonate with me because it's the same. I felt the same thing. It took a long time for me to be conscious of this stuff. And I always had little inklings. I'm like, oh, I know that this comedy sketch I've written, like people like it and it's different from other ones I've seen. So there's something there, even if it's not perfect. I know that's very different, but like there's like, you have these little clues, but you're not like consciously grabbing it because you're just hitting up against something else.
Yeah.
I think then it comes back to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It totally makes sense. I think it's also like when you start to eventually throughout your career, like, you start realizing that the more honest you are, the more like where you're pulling from your own experiences. This is what people will actually resonate with you instead of like creating fantastic fantasies of what you think is funny or what you think is a good melody or what you think people will like. That usually falls short often. It could be a great starting off point, but like I think most people will definitely resonate with stuff that's personal. And I think I realized that later as I was starting Kishi Bashi, or like that was such a commodity. That's so valuable as a creative person. To pull from a personal place.
Yeah. Okay. Then last question. What was there a thing that made you realize that, or was it just a slow dawning?
I think it was a slow dawning in that I started being probably because Kishibashi was doing so well. I started to because I'm an engineer. I like to like figure out what's broken and what's not broken or how it works. So I think I started to realize, oh, this is what works. Is people like this personality, this artist, this kind of artistic personality. And I think so I started just really just like, just living that, just realizing that I need to make time for my art and make time. And now this is all I do is I just make time to find personal spaces, or personal ideas and things that interest me.
Yeah. Is your artistic personality you plus something? Like my wife, she's a stand-up, right? And her stage persona is just her with more energy. Like she's the same. She's the same at home as she is on stage. She just has more energy on stage.
Yeah. Like, I think Kishibashi is an extension of my personality. It's not, I'm not like a superhero or anything,
Sure. Right.
A vigilante out there. Like,
right. You don't put a cowl on before you go on stage. No. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get dressed up, but that's about it,
Right.
I think.
Right.
I think.
What do you think? What kind of extension? Like, what is it that is like going into that is not in your daily life necessarily?
I don't know. Like in my daily life, I don't sing and dance around.
Sure. But I meant like existentially, say, like, is there something, or is it's just you, but more you?
It's just me on a stage. I'm still kind of goofy and like, but I still like to have fun. And I understand I'm in full, when I perform, I'm in full understanding that people there are there to have fun and they want to like forget about their like week, or to enjoy time with others. And they're spending money, like serious money to be there. So it's like, I respect that and I try and give them a good time and I try and stay positive and,
Yeah. I think that's the thing. Once you start acknowledging the audience as being part of the artistic process in that space, I think that's when that's the thing that makes you someone that pushes them into that. I don't even know how I want to phrase this. I just know that like once, like there was a time when I thought that the audience was my adversary and it was me versus them, as opposed to, no, we are in this together and you are here for a reason, not just to like, you're not just there to sate my ego.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's like my first album was 151A. And in Japanese, that's Ichigo Ichie, which is like, it sounds like Ichigo Ichie, which is a Japanese word that means one time, one meeting, meaning that every single interaction, like especially like a performance, is unique to that one moment in time. And so like, this will never be the same like it is right now, And so like, there's a beauty in that like enjoy it, cherish it for with its mistakes, and imperfections. And so I think that's kind of like how I view like live performance, is that it's going to be different. You're going to have a good time, good day, bad day. You might tell some different jokes. You might have different interactions, but it's going to be unique.
Yeah.
All
right.
So.
Well, that seems like a wonderful place to end. Thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
me.
you're welcome. Cool. Nice to meet you.
This is very nice. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, that was super fun.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.